There are TV characters that fade into obscurity over time, but some make their return in the strangest ways possible, and this is one of those stories. It all began in 1979, when a children's show called Jigsaw premiered in the United Kingdom. It was an educational program for kids, filled with games, riddles, and short sketches. Its goal was to get children thinking, solving puzzles, and keeping them entertained in a calm, family-friendly way. But among all its characters, one stood out more than any other, and not for good reasons. His name was Mr. Nosybonk. At first glance, he was already unsettling. He wore a huge white mask with a pointed nose, an odd smile, and empty eyes. He dressed formally, walked in an awkward, stiff manner, and appeared doing things that made no sense, while strange music played in the background. Even today, decades later, many people consider him one of the most disturbing children's characters in British television history. What's even stranger is that the problem wasn't only the character itself, but also the actor behind the mask. According to people who worked on the show, the man had quite uncomfortable behavior. He was intense, controlling, and completely obsessed with the role. He wanted to write his own scripts and perform scenes exactly the way he wanted. While the rest of the program tried to stay educational and fun, the segments featuring Nosybonk grew increasingly bizarre and hard to follow. The show's producers didn't know what to do. Often, they would simply send him out with a cameraman to film whatever he came up with, and later try to edit the footage to make it look like a normal children's sketch. As time went on, the situation got worse. The actor clashed with the show's creators and was eventually fired, roughly 1 year before the series was finally canceled. But before leaving, he did something rather strange. He took the original mask and full costume of Mr. Nosybonk with him, and that is where the story takes an even more unusual turn. Over the years, the character practically vanished. There were no toys, no merchandise, no masks sold, and barely any information about the actor. On sites like IMDb, it wasn't even properly recorded who had actually played Nosybonk. It was as if that person had disappeared completely from the internet, until 2008, when something unexpected happened. 3 new videos appeared on YouTube showing Mr. Nosybonk once again, but this time not inside a children's program. They were extremely strange, homemade recordings with unsettling background music and a far more disturbing atmosphere. Worst of all, many believe it was the original actor wearing the real mask and costume because his appearance matched perfectly. Only now he looked noticeably older. In those videos, the character did exactly what he had probably always wanted to do: absurd scenes, long, uncomfortable silences, and deeply unnerving behavior, but this time without producers or anyone else controlling him. This turned Mr. Nosybonk into a kind of dark internet legend. Many people began investigating who the actor really was, what had happened to him, and why he remained so obsessed with the character even decades later. To this day, theories still circulate. Some believe he was just an eccentric performer. Others think he struggled with mental health issues or had an unhealthy fixation on the role. But the truth is, there is almost no official information about him. And perhaps that is what makes this story so unsettling. Because this is not some made-up creepypasta. The show really existed, the character really existed, and those videos truly appeared. The year 1979 also saw the debut of Slniečko, a Czechoslovakian children's program created to entertain young viewers with songs, puppets, and gentle educational lessons. Back then, animation was far too expensive, so most children's television relied heavily on marionettes and large, full-body costumes. That was when Ratafak first appeared. The character was enormous, strange, and quite difficult to describe. He had an extremely long neck, oversized hands, giant eyes, massive teeth, and clumsy movements that looked completely out of control. His voice was high-pitched, jarring, and to many, downright irritating. The concept of the show was that Ratafak would act like a silly character. He would say absurd or incorrect things so that children could correct him and feel smarter by comparison. On paper, it sounded like an innocent idea, but on screen, the result was deeply unsettling. In fact, if you look at footage from the program today, the first thing you notice isn't the puppet itself, but the expressions on the children's faces. Many look uncomfortable, confused, or plainly frightened as the character looms and moves around them. For years, parents sent letters of complaint about the character. From the late 1970s and throughout the 1980s, many people argued that Ratafak was nothing like a children's figure, and that his appearance was far too bizarre for broadcast television. And honestly, it's easy to understand why. What's most surprising is that the character was originally meant to become an international children's icon. The creators wanted him to be recognized across many countries, similar to other famous educational mascots of that era. But the exact opposite happened. He ended up being remembered only for how disturbing he was. Ratafak was operated by two puppeteers at the same time. One controlled one hand, while the other managed the head, the other hand, and also provided the voice. That explains why his movements looked so uncoordinated and unnatural. Beyond the TV series, the character also made appearances in schools and public events. Imagine being a small child in the 1980s and seeing this giant figure walk into your classroom. The name Ratafak Plashta has several approximate translations, but the most widely accepted meaning is something like long snout blanket or long neck sheet, referring to his exaggerated design. And although officially he was just a children's puppet, one of the strangest details emerged years later when the character's own creator admitted in an interview that Ratafak was actually meant to represent a monster. That revelation made many people look back at the character in a completely different light. The show ended in 1989 and slowly faded into obscurity. But the story didn't stop there. In 2008, according to multiple reports, the original puppet of Ratafak was found abandoned inside a dumpster. Not long after, short clips and new images of the character began appearing online, leading the internet to fully rediscover this bizarre figure from Czechoslovakian television history. Since then, Ratafak Plashta has become one of those forgotten children's characters that spark both fascination and fear at the same time. Much like other eerie icons of European television from the 1970s and 80s, and perhaps the most unsettling detail of all, he was originally supposed to be loved and adored by children.